get your panties up into a tizzy. But I believe this is the absolute truth. And I want to make this emphatically clear. Apartheid was absolutely evil. It was the systemic oppression and racism of blacks and other minorities in South Africa. And I went through, I mean, just doing tons of research on it, reading through it. I didn't want to be one of these guys that just, just gave you some quick sound bites when it came to this issue with the white South African farmers. But I'm here to tell you that the white South African farmers, and I'm going to go through some details, are experiencing what is the start of an absolute genocide that is occurring in South Africa. And again, like I said, I'm not minimizing apartheid. I'm going to give you some history on some of the things that occurred during apartheid. But what the media is not telling you about these white South African farmers, many of them of Dutch heritage, have been in this region of the world, in South Africa, for 400 years. For 400 years. So there is a tactic that is being used to dehumanize these farmers, much like the Armenian Christians in Turkey and also like the Jews in Nazi Germany. And that way, if you can say that, hey, listen, these people don't belong here, right? That's some of the things, that's one of the things that's happening. Now, let me give you some information. Let me give you some information just so that we know what a refugee is, because you have a lot of people on the left that are sitting here that are opining, that are writing columns, that are out there saying, wait a minute. Why is Trump allowing these refugees, quote unquote, to come into the United States of America, but he will not allow these illegal aliens, the Trinidadians, the Venezuelans, which unfortunately the Supreme Court just made it a little harder to deport gangsters, illegal alien criminal gangsters out of the United States of America. Absolutely insane to me. But this is where we are in America. But let's clarify what a refugee is. First off, you need to know this. We are the only country in the world dumb enough to allow illegals to come in and claim refugee status. I take that back. I think Canada may be dumb enough as well. So we're the only two dumb countries in the world that are willing to let so-called refugees, illegal aliens in. And actually, I won't even use the term refugees, because then I would be correct. So I'm going to give you the correct definition of a refugee so that you know what a refugee is. Someone that wants to come into your country simply for a better life is not a refugee. I'm sorry, that is an invader. It is as simple as that. That is an illegal alien. That is not a refugee. That is not a legal immigrant. Somebody called me out on one of the social media sites the other day asking the question, well, Carl, how can you say that these people are refugees just like these other Trumpsters, but these people coming in from, across the border aren't refugees? You're a hypocrite. No, I'm not a hypocrite. You're misinformed. So what is a refugee? A refugee and the refugee status is very simple. You have to have one of 5 requirements in order to be a refugee. Much like Ilhan Omar was escaping her family, escaping persecution in the Middle East, so are the white farmers escaping political persecution in South Africa. Here are the reasons. The requirements of refugee status are simple. There has to be a well-founded, quote-unquote, fear of persecutions for reasons of race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or a membership of in a particular social group. All right? You don't get to come to the United States of America because you're poor, because you say you want a better life. Now, you can apply for citizenship status inside of the United States, perhaps because you do want a better life. You don't get to come illegally, I should say, to clarify that. You can apply. These white South African farmers went through a legitimate process in order to become refugees. They didn't come to the southern border. They didn't come through the northern border. They went through a legitimate process. Now, I want to make something clear. And honestly, I think this is so I think this is so brilliant in so many ways. Again, my point is that I believe that the genocide that is occurring in South Africa is worse than apartheid. And apartheid was evil. And apartheid lasted for decades there, several decades, over 50, 60 years or so in South Africa. And it was horrendous. There's no doubt about it. Let me just give you some history because I don't want to minimize apartheid. I don't want to minimize what a lot of people consider to be evil. And it is evil. It was evil. It is the term systemic racism does not exist in America. It did exist in South Africa. And at one point, it did exist thanks to Democrats and the Jim Crow South and the Ku Klux Klan that were created by the Democrat Party in the United States. There was a level of systemic racism inside of America. Thank God, for the most part, it was concentrated in the South. However, it trickled throughout the United States. There's no doubt about it. But we were able to get past it. We are past it. And the left wants to bring racism back. The truth of the matter is the white South Africans are the real refugees. The real refugees. Regardless of whether or not you like it. But let me give you some of the policies of apartheid because I want you to be informed. Again, I'm not minimizing evil. Apartheid, evil. What's happening with these white South Africans, even more evil, if you can imagine it. Apartheid was a policy. This is Britannica from Britannica.com. Apartheid was a policy that governed relations between South Africa's white minority and non-white majority for much of the latter half of the 20th century. They sanctioned racial segregation and political and economic discrimination against non-whites. The legislation that formed the foundation of apartheid had actually had been repealed by the early 1990s. We've all heard of Nelson Mandela. Now, one thing that Nelson Mandela did after he was released from prison, because he was a victim of apartheid, but one thing that Nelson Mandela did was try to move away from a more communistic society that they have in South Africa. Right now, South Africa is run by a communist regime. We'll get into that momentarily. Nelson Mandela tried to bring a mix of prosperity, of capitalism inside of South Africa, and the country started heading a better way, going a better route. And then after his passing, it's like everything has collapsed. The communists have taken over. And all communists know, all they know how to do is rule by force, rule by power. That's what they do. And they kill people. They don't care. They don't care. And so this goes on to say, although the legislation that formed the foundation of apartheid had been repealed by the early 1990s, the social and economic repercussions of the discriminatory policy persisted into the 21st century. Okay, I do want to say this. At some point, the only way you get past racism is to get past racism. Someone's got to say, this was evil. This was wrong. We're moving on. I got a video clip that I want to show you real quick. Gabe, if you could get cut number 57. And I want you to see this video. This is of Representative Ayanna Pressley, once again asking for reparations. Gabe, if we have that video, let's play it, please.
Discrimination against Black people. We are in a moment of anti-Blackness on steroids, and we refuse to be silent. We will not back down in our pursuit of racial justice. The antidote to anti-Blackness is to be pro-Black, and we will do it unapologetically. The United States government owes us a debt, and we need reparations now.
No. Are you silly? This is one of the most powerful people inside of the United States asking for reparations when she's not been a slave and she does not know a live slaveholder. This lady is a complete and utter moron. She's divisive. This is what these people want. These people need racism. Ayanna Pressley and the squad, they need racism in order to feel like their lives are meaningful and purposeful inside of the United States of America. But the truth is, America has moved past it, but the Democrat Party has not. Because the Democrat Party, you hear me? You understand me? Is systemically racist. You have to understand that. The Democratic Party is systemically racist. They are the party of the KKK. They are the party of the Jim Crow South. They are the party that were against civil rights in America until it became politically expedient, and then the racist LBJ that had opposed civil rights inside of America all of a sudden decides that he has to be the president to bring it about. But it had already been brought about thanks to the Republican Party that fought against slavery, that fought against polygamy, that signed the first orders, if you will, against or for civil rights in America over 100 years before LBJ signed the Civil Rights Act. Guys, I will get in further to apartheid. I will dive in deep to these white African farmers. These are real victims of genocide. They have it worse than the system of apartheid. All right. Hello, everyone that is tuning in to the Carl Jackson Show. I appreciate you tuning in on Instagram, on YouTube, and Rumble. Wherever you are watching, we certainly appreciate it. Please follow me on all things social media. I'm on X, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, even though Facebook is punishing me right now. But please follow me at The Carl Jackson Show or at Carl Jackson Show. X, Instagram, and Facebook are the places where you can find me. I really do appreciate you guys tuning in to the show. I'm probably going to do a two-parter on this series because it is so extensive. I've done some extensive research. I wanted to go back and really delve in. I knew what apartheid was, but I really wanted to go back and delve into apartheid because it was so evil. It was so evil. But I'm telling you, what's happening to these white farmers is even more evil, if you can imagine, than apartheid. So that's what we're digging into today. I've got to get me something to drink here real quick. And then I want to get right back into it. And again, I appreciate all you guys tuning in. I'm reaching for my trusty backpack here. All right, Gabe. All right. Welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show. Again, thank you for all of you that are checking out the show. We certainly appreciate that. But I want to get into apartheid, and then I'm going to get into what's happening in South Africa with the white farmers. And I'm going to prove to you that what's happening in South Africa right now is worse than the apartheid that was experienced. And it was evil and it was horrible. And it's hard to imagine. I know, oh, Carl, I can't believe you're saying something like this. Absolute sellout. Why would you sell out your own people? Well, first off, I'm an American, and I'm here to just tell you the truth. All right, as I see it, plain and simple. You don't have to agree with me, but you know I'm right. All right, but this is what these white South African farmers are experiencing is absolutely evil. All right, what blacks experienced or South Africans experienced during apartheid was absolutely evil. Absolutely horrendous. There was systemic oppression. There was systemic racism. Law enforcement was able to crack down on people during apartheid, torture people, and in cases where they felt necessary, even kill people. And as evil as that is, and as horrific as that it was, the segregation was just insane. I mean, the only reason or the way that the system was created of apartheid, blacks and other minorities would get to go to school, would get to go to higher education. But basically, all they would learn to do is how to do menial labor, how to be good employees, if you will, how to be good slaves for the man. So it was bad. It was bad. And it didn't always exist there, but it was bad. So I don't want to minimize it. There were a few groups there. Racial segregation sanctioned by law was widely practiced in South Africa. Again, this is from Britannica before 1948. But when the National Party, led by Daniel F. Malin, I believe I'm pronouncing that name correctly, gained office that year, it extended the policy and gave it the name apartheid. The implementation of apartheid, often called separate development since the 1960s was made possible through the Population Registration Act of 1950, which classified all South Africans as either one. You were either a Bantu, which is Black African, you were colored, which is a mixed race. And again, I'm going to get to the white South Africans because I believe their plight is worse, but I want you to be informed. All right. Color were those people of mixed race. All right. So notice that the left uses the word colored. And I even hear some Republicans, conservatives using that word colored. Do not use the word colored. Don't do it. Excuse me. It's a tactic by the left. See, the implication is if everyone else is colored, you're not. They're trying to exclude you if you're white. Don't let them do that to you. It's wrong. They're trying to, the Democrat Party, the left of the Democrat Party, is trying to bring racism here. And it can only get worse if we don't nip this in the bud. This is why I can't tolerate nonsense when it comes to reparations. Who gets reparations? What if you weren't a slave? What if the white people living here today inside of the United States, many of them whose ancestors came through Paris Island, weren't even here during the slave era, weren't even here during Reconstruction? How do you know who gets reparations, who doesn't? You don't. What about people, and you've heard others say this, what about people of mixed race? Do they get half the benefit? No. At some point, to end racism, you have to move past it. You have to. What's happening in South Africa is revenge at a level that we've not experienced, that we've not seen. And it's hard for people inside of America, including blacks, liberals, Democrats, to get a grasp on that. There was the third group was considered white. So you had the Bantus in South Africa, black Africans, colored were the mixed race, the whites. And then you had a fourth category that consisted of Asians, Indian, and Pakistani that was later added. One of the most significant acts in terms of forming the basis of apartheid system was the Group Areas Act of 1950. All right, that established residential and business section in urban areas for each and every race, and members of other races were barred from living, operating businesses, or owning land in them. So apartheid was evil. This led to thousands of coloreds, blacks, and Indians being removed from areas that were classified for white occupation. So again, notice what I'm doing here. Let's speak the truth. We can say that apartheid was evil. And the reason why I can say that apartheid was evil is because I've studied it. I didn't live it, thank God, but I've studied it. It was evil. But it's also the reason why I can say, because I've studied it, that what the white South African farmers are going through right now is even more evil. In practice, this act, again, the Group Areas Act of 1950, and two others in 1954 and 1955 became known collectively as the Lands Act. That completed a process that had begun with similar land acts that were adopted as early as 1913 and 1936. So here's the end result. The end result was to set aside more than 80% of South Africa's land for the white minority. All right. This was the system of apartheid to help enforce the segregation of the races and prevent blacks from encroaching on white areas. So this occurred in 1913 and 1936. Here's the problem. A lot of the Dutch farmers have been around since the 1600s. So that isn't to say that white government that implemented apartheid was absolutely evil. That isn't to say that some of these farmers and not the current farmers, but some of their ancestors didn't benefit. I don't know who benefited. I don't know who didn't, but I know whites did during apartheid. All right, that's obvious. All right, so they did this to help enforce the segregation of the races. They wanted blacks to not encroach in white areas. The government strengthened existing past laws, quote unquote, which required non-whites to carry documents authorizing their presence in restricted areas. Other acts also led to physical separation of the races under the Bantu Authorities Act of 1951, in which the government reestablished tribal organizations for black Africans, and the promotion of Bantu Self-Government Act of 1959 that created 8 African homelands, or Bantustans, as they were called. And I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. So you had the Bantu Homelands Citizenship Act of 1970 that made every black South African, irrespective of their actual residents at Bantustan, all right, um, which were organized on the basis of ethnic and linguistic groupings defined by ethnographers. Now, I realize that I'm getting deep here, but I'm getting deep so that I can make the comparison as to the levels of evil that exist and why I can make the case that what's happening with the South Africans is worse. The white South African farmers is even worse than apartheid. So this is evil. I don't think anybody watching this podcast would deny this. This is evil. Apartheid was evil. The South African government manipulated homeland politics so that compliant chiefs controlled the administrations of most of the territory. Sounds like the Democrat Party to me. All right, four of the Bantustans, the Transkei, the Bafu, Taswana, Venda, and Siski, I know I'm butchering those names, were later granted independence as republics, though none was ever recognized by a foreign government. And that's a problem. There's no doubt about it. Regardless of their independence of self-governing status, these groups, all the Bantustans, remain dependent both politically and economically on South Africa, because the goal was to make sure that they felt like they were independent, even though they weren't, because the white South African government wanted and needed their labor. So it was evil. All right, I don't think we should ever minimize that. When it came to education, separate educational standards were established for non-whites. The Bantu Education Act of 1953 provided for the creation of state-run schools, which black children were required to attend, with the goal of training the children for manual labor and menial jobs that the government deemed suitable for those of their race. And I explained this earlier. The Extension of University Education Act in 1959 prohibited established universities from accepting non-white students. So the goal was no doubt black oppression in apartheid. That was systemic racism. That was systemic oppression. The government created new ethnic universities and colleges, one of each for coloreds, Indians, Zulus, and one for the Soto, Tswana, and Venda students, as well as a medical school for blacks as well. Other laws were also passed to legalize and institutionalize the apartheid system. You had the Prohibition Mixed Marriages Act and the Immorality Amendment Act of 1950 that prohibited interracial marriage or sex. You had the Suppression of Communism Act, which that comes full circle, that defined communism and its aim broadly to include any opposition to the government and empowered the government to detain anyone it thought might further communist aims. Now, they were acting as the communists. Four, the Indemnity Act of 1961 made it legal for police officers, and this is really harsh, to commit acts of violence or torture or to kill in the pursuit of official duties. So now, in the next block, I'm going to get to the white South African farmers. This was disgusting. What you're about to hear next is even worse. This is the Carl Jackson Show. Hello, everyone. I appreciate you guys tuning in to the Carl Jackson Show. I'm breaking down both apartheid. I haven't heard any conservative do it. And I don't like conservatives minimizing apartheid because it's evil. But I'm here to tell you that what the white South African farmers, and we're not back on live yet, or we are, but what the white South African farmers are experiencing is worse. And I'm going to be getting to that next. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. Please follow me. All things social media. I'm on X. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, even though Facebook is bullying me right now, but we'll get back on there. So please, at Carl Jackson Show, at The Carl Jackson Show. Also, subscribe to my podcast if you would. The Carl Jackson Show. We're on YouTube. We're on Rumble. Wherever you go, Salem Podcast Network. Wherever you go to get your podcast. Guys, I got to talk to you real quick about My Pillow. All right, as you know, our friend Mike Lindell has a passion to help everyone get the best sleep of your life. He didn't stop by simply creating the best pillow. Mike created the best bed sheets ever. They look and feel great, which means an even better night's sleep for me, which is crucial for my busy schedule. Man, that's true. I love My Pillow and I love their sheets. All right, so Mike is offering the best deal on his Giza Dream bed sheets, any size, any color, just $49.98. That's right. You can even get queens, kings, split kings, and cow kings any size and any color for just $49.98. Order now because when they're gone, they're gone. Also, for a limited time, when your order is over $100, you will receive $100 in free digital gifts. That is insane. All you have to do is call 1-800-858-0263. 1-800-858-0263. Use the promo code Carl, C-A-R-L, or go to MyPillow. And I don't spell it like the communists, all right? C-A-R-L. All right, go to MyPillow.com. Please make sure you use the promo code Carl, C-A-R-L, for the amazing offer of $49.98 on the Giza Dream Sheets, any size, any color. Again, that number, 1-800-858-0263, promo code Carl. All right. Now, I got a lot of video that I want to run. So, Gabe, por favor, please have your hands on the trigger. And I wrote these down somewhere, and now I don't know where I wrote them down. So, before I get to Gabe. All right, good. I got them here. All right. So, before we get back to the programming, let me take a swig. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, everybody that's commenting on the chat. I really do appreciate you guys tuning in. I know this is a Saturday, but you know, I love Saturday mornings, and perhaps we are deciding on maybe this is the avenue that we'll go, doing a live show on Saturday mornings, so I can dive deep into a particular topic like this that, frankly, I've been wanting to hit all week, and other people have been hitting in conservative media and on conservative radio and television alike, but nobody has gone in depth. And I think it's really important. I want my audience to be informed. I do. I really take pride in doing research myself and making sure that you're as informed, if not more, than I am, because maybe you guys have some thoughts that you'd share with me. All right. So anyway, let's get back to the show. All right, welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show. Again, this is your daily dose of objective reality in a world of confusion and lies. And I am making the case that the genocide, and I am intentionally using that word because the South African government is trying to cover this up. The genocide of the white South African farmers and what they've been enduring for the last decade is worse than the several decades of apartheid that were endured by blacks. Now, black Africans. I know that's hard to hear, especially if you're on the left. Both are evil. Apartheid is gone in South Africa. At some point, as hard as it is, if you want to get past racism, you got to make the choice to get past racism. South Africa has not made that choice. Instead, they're going into a season where, I hate to tell this to you, I don't think you've seen anything yet. I want to play a couple videos. This is cut number 29. This is the Afrikaners that the left absolutely went nuts after. And now I want you to understand what's happening before we play this video, cut number 29. These white refugees, and they are refugees. In case you just tuned in, you should be informed. You cannot come to the United States because you just want more money. You cannot come to the United States just because you want a better life. Well, you can legally, right? People do apply legally. I'm speaking of specifically for a refugee, for refugee status. All right. Let me just reiterate this. If you're coming to the United States for refugee status, there's only 5 ways in which that applies. That is if you are the victim of political persecution because of your race, because of your religion, because of your nationality, because of your political opinion, or because you're the member of some type of small subgroup that's being persecuted by the government. You cannot apply for refugee status as 10, 20 million illegal aliens have done inside of the United States. You cannot apply for refugee status just because you say you want a better life. No, it doesn't work that way. Again, the United States and I believe Canada are the only countries dumb enough in the entire world to allow that to happen, as well as birthright citizenship. Another dumb policy that's going to destroy America, quite frankly. And it has nothing to do with skin color. It has everything to do with belief systems and value systems and worldviews. Cut number 29, please, Gabe. We have that. Why would the left go so apoplectic seeing this? All right, why would the left go so apoplectic seeing this? There's a strategy happening here. And guys, this has got to happen. I know some of you don't like to hear this, but I think this is a great strategy by Donald Trump. You prove that the left is racist. They won't get past racism. All right, the left always defends the indefensible. They defended this Trinde Aragua gangster. They're defending MS-13 people in that New Jersey ICE detention facility. They defend the indefensible. And Trump is allowing them to put it on full display. Kudos to him. But what the left can't chance is the idea that the narrative will shift. Wait a minute. You mean blacks can be racist too? No. Blacks can't be racist because of systemic racism, systemic oppression. Well, what if it's the blacks that are creating the systemic oppression? Guys, call me a sellout. I don't give a flip. I'm a Christian. I'm not perfect. Far from it. But I'm just going to speak the truth to you. Let's talk about some white South Africans. There was a column shared with me by Sean McConnell. The new American genocide and communism threaten South Africa. I'm going to talk to you about some pretty gruesome stories. So I want you to brace yourself. I got to read this stuff. I don't have it down, packed in my memory. But the stories are alarming. So I want you to brace yourself. Along a highway on a grassy hill, thousands of white crosses, each one representing an individual victim of brutal farm murders. I don't know how to pronounce this word, or plasmordae, Plasmoorde in Afrikaans, are a stark reminder of the reality facing European descent farmers in New South Africa. One of the iron crosses was planted last year in memory of 2-year-old Wilhelmine Potgieter. And guys, I'm going to butcher these names, so forgive me. Who was executed on a farm. She was left in a pool of her own blood. 2-year-old. Her parents were murdered too. The father hacked to death with a machete. Before leaving, the half-dozen killers tied a knot to the gate. Quote, "We killed them. We're coming back." Close quote. The Potgieter family massacre is just one of the tens of thousands of farm attacks that have plagued South Africa since 1994. Like little Wilhelmine's cross, many of those now iconic emblems represent innocent children, even babies who have been savagely murdered, oftentimes being tortured in ways that are so gruesome, horrifying, and barbaric that mere words could not ever adequately describe it. The death toll is still rising. Like countless South Africans, here's another story. A man by the name of Andre Vandenberg has lost multiple relatives to violence in the so-called Rainbow Nation. In separate incidents, according to Vandenberg, a motorcycle exporter and former military man who now lives in the United States, by the way, 2 of his female cousins were brutally and repeatedly raped in front of their husbands. They were white South African farmers. One of the women was pregnant with the couple's first child. All 5 victims were murdered after sodomizing and killing the husbands. In both cases, the attackers raped Vandenberg's cousins again after they had sodomized and killed their husbands. You guys heard of necklacing? Enduring the horror for hours, one of the women was eventually shot. The other had a tire filled with gasoline put around her neck, and it was set ablaze. That's known as necklacing, which was once commonly meted out to black opponents of the predominantly African National Congress. This is a communist organization that now rules South Africa in an unholy alliance with the South African Communist Party. It's another umbrella group for labor unions in South Africa. So now Vandenberg has also lost his father. So he lost his cousins. Before Vandenberg lost his cousins, his father was killed by a truck driver in a suspicious accident. The drunken suspect, apparently a respected figure with the ANC, the African National Congress, was arrested at the scene. However, under pressure from the ANC, the killer was released. What do you think the bail was? $100. With the help of the ANC, Vandenberg said the driver fled and was never prosecuted for the killing. There was no explanation ever given by authorities. Vandenberg's brother was also killed, and so was another male cousin of his. So within a year of his arrival, Vandenberg's brother had to come back or had to go back. He was in the United States. Paperwork issue, whatever it was, his brother had to return to South Africa as a result of that, and he was killed too. Within a year of his arrival, he was brutally murdered. Witnesses watched the murder unfold and told police, but as is typical, nobody was ever prosecuted. A male cousin of Vandenberg's, meanwhile, was shot in the chest while being robbed, and is often the case, the murder was labeled an accident by authorities. All right, so this is what Vandenberg had to say. It's racial crime. He's an Afrikaner, descendant of Dutch settlers. In an interview with the New American that I'm reading, quote, the ANC people are using genocide. They're pro-genocide. And the left does not want to hear this term. But this is why what's happening now is worse than apartheid. What's happening to the white South African farmers is worse than apartheid. This is a systematic genocide. This isn't systematic oppression. This isn't systematic racism. As evil as those are, this is systematic genocide. Long term, they want all the property that belongs to the whites, he says. The black-led ANC communist regime is twice as racist, quote unquote, as the former white-led apartheid government ever was, he added. And along with its supporters, the South African government is willing to do anything, quote unquote. There's a chant that the ANC government chants, all right, including South African President Jacob Zuma, a chant about exterminating whites. They say, quote, some people, he says, quote, some people think they're just singing songs, Vandenberg said, becoming visibly uncomfortable at the thought of it. He says, quote, but I think they're very serious about that. That's why we have all the farm murders. What they do, their followers will follow, close quote. And that's the fear. That's the fear. Their followers will follow. You have a leadership in place in South Africa that is hell-bent on killing white farmers and taking their lands. Of course, that's going to spread to the everyday citizens, if you will, of South Africa. You are listening to the Carl Jackson Show. We'll wrap this up on the other side. Guys, again, I appreciate you tuning in to the Carl Jackson Show. Just a quick reminder, X, Instagram, and Facebook is where you can go to find me, primarily at Carl Jackson Show, at The Carl Jackson Show. Please follow me on these places. Really does help. And please subscribe to my podcast, The Carl Jackson Show, is where you can go to find me. We're on Salem Podcast Network. We're on YouTube. We're on Rumble. If you guys have any comments, please do so. Please feel free to comment on my social media pages too. All right. I do try to follow up on as many comments as possible. Can't get to all of them, but I do try to intentionally work hard to get to many of you. So if you want to comment now, feel free to do so. After the program is over, I'll be happy to answer or some of the comments or respond to some of the comments if you would like to do so. All right. So now, without any further ado, I want to get back to the programming and a couple more videos that I want to play for you as well. All right, so here we go. All right, so welcome back to the program again. You are listening to the Carl Jackson Show. I got a couple videos that I want to play for you. We're going to go with cut 33 first, Gabe, when you can get that ready. Actually, 31, 32, and 33. We'll try to break these down as quickly as possible. But I think I want to go. Actually, let's do this. Let's go to cut number 33 real quickly here. This is a TikTok influencer within the United States of America, and I'm here to argue that what the white farmers in South Africa are enduring right now is even worse and even more evil than apartheid because you do have systemic genocide taking place. You had one of the leaders, I believe the president of South Africa that came out and called these white South Afrikaners cowards for leaving. Guys, over 10% since 1994, actually within the last 10 years, I believe it is, 10% of the white farmers inside of South Africa have been slaughtered, and not just shot. I'm talking about torture, like I mentioned before, brutally murdered, raped, beheaded, you name it. Cut number 33, please, Gabe.
Good morning. This is for the South Africans who are going to be entering the United States. This is just a public service announcement. I just wanted to make you aware that the Black people who were students during apartheid, we're grandmas and grandpas now, and we have the ear of Gen Z. One more thing. I also want to let you know that our president, he has Secret Service, and you will not. I also want to tell you that Black people over here are empowered. These are just public service announcements. When you get here, sit your ass down and don't touch nothing, because you don't have Secret Service. Okay. Now have the day you deserve.
I hope the FBI plays this ant-licking heifer a visit. Here's what I would say to the to you white South Afrikaners that have just come to the United States of America legally through real refugee status. And forgive us for the racists like this. They do exist. Blacks are empowered here. You know what? Obviously, the blacks, this lady is such a moron. Obviously, the blacks are empowered in South Africa, which is why you have white African farmers that are fleeing South Africa. I would suggest that the white African farmers that have just moved to the United States, make sure you move to what's called a red state that loves the Second Amendment, 2A rights. All right. You want to be able to carry a pistol with you. All right. That'll take care of morons like that. And I'm not advocating for violence, but if you have to defend yourself, thank God you came to a country that believes in defending yourself against a tyrannical government, and you have the right of self-defense. So make sure you move to a red state and arm up. All right. There's that. God bless America. All right. So let's get to more of this crazy story. And I don't know this lady's background. Is she claiming to be from South Africa? She's claiming that she was a student. She doesn't look old enough since apartheid ended in the early 90s. Maybe she was. But I want to get back to this. Here's what the left always says, or here's what the communists in South Africa say in their own defense. Well, and I've heard some people on the left. I read a column this morning from a lefty, because I read the lefty stuff too. All right, so I read a column this morning where they use this very excuse. The argument that they use is crime is bad for all South Africans. It's not just whites. All right, and you hear that and you're like, okay, it makes sense. A bad, corrupt government, a communist government, an evil government inside of South Africa. This makes perfect sense. It's bad for all South Africans. All right, that's the point that the regime makes. The country has one of the highest murder rates in the world, and that's why they can make that argument against blacks, whites, people of Asian origin, and others that are all terrorized by it. But respected independent experts who have investigated allegations of anti-white genocide in the Rainbow Nation have concluded that the government is not being honest about the wave of genocidal murders. And again, that's the word, genocide, that they want you to ignore, to avoid. The ANC's national spokesman declined repeated comments or requests for comments. Now, here's what's happening. A fact-finding mission to South Africa in July happened by a guy by the name of Dr. Gregory Stanton. He's head of the nonprofit group Genocide Watch, which you can find online. He announced his conclusions, quote, one, or actually not a quote, but one, there is an orchestrated genocidal campaign that is targeting whites and white farmers in particular. All this guy does is study genocides and their phases and how they happen. He says the respected organization has released a report about it. Perhaps I'll post this up on my social media if you guys would like to delve into this yourself. He says on a scale, the group developed to identify the phases of genocide. South Africa has been moved to stage 6, the preparation and planning phase. Step seven. Listen to me, is extermination. The 8th and final stage is denial after the fact. So they're already in the process of genocide inside of South Africa with these white farmers. Among the startling discoveries long known to South Africans and analysts monitoring the powder keg was evidence pointing to the ANC regime itself. Again, what is the ANC? The African National Congress. All right, so referring to them themselves, quote, there is thus strong circumstantial evidence of government support for the campaign of forced displacement and atrocities against white farmers and their families. Now, again, what the left is arguing is apartheid. These people took all of our land during apartheid. Well, again, I'm sure there's a level of truth to that, obviously. I read you all the laws, all the acts during apartheid in South Africa. So there was no doubt that whites were buying up land, 80%. There's no doubt about that. The question I have, since the Dutch have been there for over 400 years, how much land did they already own? I'd really like to know that. Among the startling discoveries, again, okay, I went through this. Genocide Watch leaders said in their report entitled, Why Are Afrikaner Farmers Being Murdered in South Africa? There's direct evidence of South African government incitement to genocide. At least 30,000 white South African farmers, also known as Boers, you may have heard that term, Boers, have been murdered, have been slaughtered. All right, so this organization tracks the killing spree. At least 3,000 farmers have been slaughtered. Some estimates put the figures even higher, but it is hard to know because the ANC government has purposely made it impossible to determine the true extent. Now, keep in mind, there's between 30 to 40,000 of these farmers, these Boers in South Africa. Again, you're looking at 10% that have been murdered, slaughtered, tortured. Here's another example of torture that is happening to the white South African, and I'm purposely using that phrase or that word, white South African farmers that are being the victims of genocide in South Africa. He says it is worse than murder. Although many of the victims, including children and even infants, are raped or savagely tortured or both before executed or left for dead, he says sometimes boiling water is poured down their throats. Other attacks involve burning victims with hot irons or slicing them up with machetes. And more than a few cases, he writes, the targets have been tied to their own cars and dragged along dirt roads for miles. This, even children. The ANC, they stopped tracking the stats. So we don't even know if it's true that only 3,000 South African farmers have been murdered, maimed, slaughtered in the last 10 years. It's crazy. The South African government, dominated by the communist-backed ANC, has responded to the surging wave of racist murders by denying the phenomena and plausibly claiming that many of the attacks are simply regular crimes that happens. Murders out there are classified as burglaries oftentimes, and the police are involved. So I guess this is revenge to a new level. The police, meanwhile, are often involved in the murders or at least the cover-ups. Multiple sources report. A white South African exile living in the United States told New American that when victims are able to defend themselves or apprehend the would-be perpetrators, many of the attackers are found to be affiliated with the ruling ANC or its youth wing. And that's what's happening. Experts aren't buying the cover-up. The farm murders we have become convinced are not accidental. And he likens this back. The reason why they call these South African farmers settlers, despite the fact that they've been there since the 1600s, is because this is a tactic that is often used by communists. This is the tactic that was used to slaughter the Christian Armenians in Turkey. In other words, they're not in their own land. This is a tactic that was used to slaughter the Jews in Nazi Germany. This is a tactic used by Iran with their proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, to slaughter Jews in Israel. The white African farmers have it worse than the apartheid era. Guys, thank you for tuning in. All right, any questions?